Good morning, gentlemen. I'm afraid my voice is a little hoarse from the coronavirus, but I hope you'll be able to live with this. Okay, I'm coming to you guys from the Deanship of the Common Year, Najma University. We are doing the English Second Language course, and this is the online version. For those of you who have never had me before, I am your teacher for this lesson, Dale Warren, and the language skill we are covering in this lesson is speaking, and this is lesson 1. We are using the textbook Q Skills for Success, and it is book for listening and speaking. All right, just 2 minutes. I'm hoping you can see this. This is the book that you should be following in. Right. Now, I know you gentlemen are not watching this in real time. And since you're not watching this in real time, if you don't have a pencil or a pen, if you don't have the right textbook, if you do not have a notebook or paper to write on, pause the video right now and go and make sure that you have the Q Skills for Success book 4, listening and speaking, a pen or pencil that you can write with, and either paper or a notebook. All right, please pause the video and go and get those things if you do not have them. All right, everybody. Before we start the lesson today, we need to speak about an issue that a lot of my students have raised with me. The issue is repetition. Repetition is a long word for a simple concept, and the concept is doing something more than once. I have an issue every semester in my speaking class and very often in my conversation classes where the students say, "Oh, you are doing the exact same vocabulary as we did in listening class," or "You are doing the exact same vocabulary as we're doing in speaking class," if I'm the conversation teacher, or "You're covering the same grammar that another teacher covered." You're quite right, we are. The whole point of repetition is to make the student remember something. Okay, so repetition is the key to learning and to memorization. If you only do something once, you will not remember it. But if you do it in the first semester and in the second semester and in your writing class and in your reading listening and speaking classes, you will remember it. So, please understand something. The entire Q Skills course is built around that concept, repetition. You do something again and again. So if you have a new word and your new word for today is something topical like coronavirus, if you hear the word, speak the word, read the word, and write the word, you will remember it. The chances are very good that if you hear the word, you speak the word, you read the word, and you write the word, you will remember it. The chances are very good if you only hear it or if you only read it that you are going to forget it. So, the important issue for us in the speaking class today is not new vocabulary. In fact, it is grammar. You will find that in all my speaking classes, I am making you write down notes on the grammar. The students always complain, before we get to the issue of your complaints, the students in most of my classes complain and say the grammar is in the book. You're quite right, it's in the book, but when the teacher is explaining, usually the students are not listening. When the teacher is speaking and telling them to follow in the book, usually they are playing on Instagram and they are not reading what is in the book. And so I make all of the students in the speaking class take grammar notes as well as reading in the book. I will be expecting you all to take grammar notes, and when you send your homework to your speaking teacher, I want those grammar notes sent as well so that we know you have written down grammar notes. Firstly, you all need practice in writing. And secondly, because I know most of the students are not really listening and not really following, when the teacher goes through the book and explains it on the board, we make you take grammar notes so that you are going to remember the grammatical concepts. Okay, let us move on. Our lesson contents today fall into three sections. We are doing gerunds and infinitives, which are on pages 18 and 19. We are doing a conversational skill, which is questions to check listener understanding. That is on page 20. And the third component of the lesson today is pronunciation, which is on the last page of the unit, and that is page 21. I will be covering those three sections with you today. Okay. We will be doing homework, and the homework will be the exercises on pages 18. We will be doing exercise A, and on page 19, exercise B. And you will also be expected to send your grammar notes with the other homework to your speaking teachers. Good. Okay. I need you all to move on to page 18 in the book. All right. If you are open at page 18, you should see in front of you a section entitled Gerunds and Infinitives. Gerunds and Infinitives. I am going to go through the grammar notes, my own grammar notes, and explain it from our perspective. And then I want you on your pieces of paper to write down the grammar notes, which are in red on the lesson plan. All right. A gerund is a verbal noun. It is the noun that we make from the verb. Now, grammar note number 2, a gerund is made by taking the base form of the verb and adding ing. So to take 2 examples, read is the base form of the verb. We add the suffix ing, and our gerund is reading. Walk is the base form of the verb. We add the suffix ing, and the gerund that we get is walking. Now, on your pieces of paper or in your notebook, I want you to put the following: page 18 grammar notes, and I need you to take these 2 notes on the gerund. The notes that go from gerund to walking. Just this section that I have written in red. I need it written into your notebook so that I know you have written it down and you are likely to remember it. Please pause the video while you're taking the notes. All right, you should have taken the notes, and I'm assuming you've now unpaused the video. There are 3 uses of the gerund. The gerund, the first use, the gerund can act as the subject of the verb. The examples: walking is healthy. Walking is the gerund, and the verb is. Reading can be fun. Reading is the subject, can is the modal verb, and be is the main verb. So in both those examples, a gerund is acting as the subject of the verb. The second usage of the gerund is after certain prepositions. The prepositions that the book is giving for examples are about, of, for, in, and against. So, if we use the gerund with one of these prepositions, the preposition comes in front of the gerund. So in the first example reads, I am against smoking. Our gerund there is smoking, and the preposition against will come in front of the gerund. In our second example, I am in favor of eating a healthy diet. Our preposition here is the word of, and it comes in front of our gerund, which is the word eating. So where you have the gerund used with a preposition, the preposition will come before the gerund. Against, the preposition comes before the gerund. Smoking, of, the preposition comes before the gerund. Eating. The third use of the gerund that we have to consider today is when it is used after the verbs to consider, recommend, or suggest. Again, it comes immediately after the verb. So if the verb is recommend, as in the first example, I recommend eating healthy food, your main verb, recommend, comes before the gerund, which is eating. In the second example, he suggests reading interesting books. The main verb, suggests, comes in front of your gerund, reading. So very simple. We can either use the gerund after those 3 verbs, consider, recommend, or suggest, or we can use the gerund after certain prepositions such as about, or of, or for, or we can use the gerund as the subject of our main verb. Right, that is the explanation of the gerund. The other grammatical concept that we have to cover today is the infinitive. The infinitive is made by adding the particle to the base verb. So if our base verb is cook, we put to in front of the cook, and our infinitive is to cook. If our base verb is eat, we put to in front of the eat, and the infinitive is to eat. We use the infinitive to carry forwards the meaning of the main verb or the meaning of the adjective. What do I mean by this? Very simply, if we have a main verb and we say something like, I want. Want is the main verb. But if I just say, I want, that doesn't tell the person what I want. So I can say, I want to eat chocolates. The main verb is want, our gerund is to eat, and our object is chocolates. Once I have the gerund to eat, that tells me what it is that I want. So it carries forwards the meaning of the main verb want. If I say Ahmed needs, again we have a main verb needs. But the problem here is, what does he need? If I say Ahmed needs to work harder, then we have an infinitive to work, and now we know what it is that Ahmed needs to do. He needs to work. So we have the main verb needs, and the infinitive to work then carries forwards the meanings of the main verb. So this is the main use of the infinitive in English. It extends the meaning of the main verb. So you will have a main verb, and immediately afterwards you will have an infinitive. The infinitive tells you the true meaning of the main verb, because the main verb alone is not going to make sense. If you just say Ahmed needs, there is a question. What does he need? If you just say I want, again we have a question. What do you want? You have to have that infinitive after the main verb so that we get the full meaning of the sentence. All right, what I need you gentlemen to do, again, the section in red here, those are the grammar notes. I need you to pause the video and on your note paper, write down the notes that are in red. And again, as I say, when you send your homework to your speaking teacher, I want you to send a copy of the grammar notes too, so that the speaking teacher will be able to see that you did some work in class and you took down the notes. All right, you gentlemen should all have paused the video and taken down the grammar notes. I'm assuming you've now unpaused the video and we can carry on. There are two main uses of the infinitive that we are covering in this section. The first construction we are covering is the infinitive with an adjective. It's a very simple construction. It has 5 blocks to it. And we start with the subject. We put in then the verb to be, any form of the verb to be. We then put in an adjective. We then put in an infinitive. And we then put in the predicate. So let us take a look at some examples. Before we look at the examples of the construction, I just want to refresh your memory. The verb to be conjugates in forms such as am, is, are, was, were, will be, has been. There are a lot of others like had been or shall be, but all of those are forms of the verb to be. Please remember that, because a lot of students in my classes get confused when we talk about the verb to be in English. It's the verb that conjugates in forms like am, is, were, will be, had been, and so forth. Right. If we take a look at this construction, it starts with a subject. We then will take in the second box the verb to be. On the third box, we put in an adjective. In the fourth box, we have an infinitive. And in the fifth box, there is the predicate. So if we look at example number 1, our subject is are. The verb to be we are taking in the form am. The adjective that we have chosen is happy. The infinitive is to eat. And the object or the predicate here is chocolate. Again, if we do not use an infinitive here, we are left with a question. If I say I am happy, you're going to ask me, well, what are you happy about? But if I say I am happy to eat chocolate, you then know what the happy is there for. I'm happy because I'm going to eat chocolate. If we look at example number 2, again we start with the subject, he. We use another form of the verb to be, was. We will then use the adjective glad. We follow that with the infinitive, to go. And the predicate here is home. Again, it's a very simple construction. And again, if we stop at glad, he was glad, we have a question. Why was he glad? What was the reason? What made him glad? If we use the infinitive after glad, the infinitive to go carries forwards the meaning of glad. And you now have your answer. He was glad to go home. All right. The other examples are equally easy. It is your subject. Is a form of the verb to be. Important, the adjective. To study, the infinitive. And hard is your predicate. Example 5. You is the subject. Are is the verb to be. Able is the adjective. The infinitive is to do. And the object is it. If you need to make this construction yourself at any stage, break it down into these 5 boxes. Start with the subject, then use the verb to be, whether you are using am, is, was, were, or whatever form of the verb to be, that comes in the second section. Your adjective will come in the third section. You will have an infinitive in the fourth section, and remember, the infinitive is to plus the base form of the verb. And then in the last section, you will have your predicate. What I suggest you do at home is use this grid and make 1 or 2 examples of the construction for yourself so that you have some practice in doing it and that you know how to do it if it comes up in the exam. That is the first use of the infinitive that we are covering today. The second use we are covering today is infinitives that are used after certain verbs. And the main verbs that we are using today are want, decide, try, hope, need, expect, agree, and learn. These main verbs usually take infinitives after them, and we need those infinitives to carry forwards the meaning of the main verb. All right, the construction we use is again a very simple one. It has 4 boxes only. So the first box is the subject. The second box is your main verb. The third box is the infinitive. And the fourth box is the predicate. Let us look at the table. All right. So if we look at example number 1, our subject in sentence number 1 is are. Our main verb is want. We have an infinitive, which in this case is to learn, and our predicate is French. Again, if we just stop the sentence at the main verb, I want, then we have a question. Well, what do you want? But once we have used the infinitive to learn, then we know what the person wants. So the infinitive will come always after your main verb, and it carries forwards the meaning of the main verb. Example number 2, she learned. Your main verb here is learned, which is the past tense of the verb to learn. And again, we need an infinitive to carry forwards the meaning of learned. And in this case, the infinitive is to drive. She learned to drive properly. We can use it again, the same construction. In example 3, our subject here is you. The main verb is need. And again, we have to have an infinitive. Again, we are using to learn. And our predicate here is also. She learned to drive properly. You need to learn also. Again, all of these 3 examples are following the same very simple pattern of 4 blocks to the construction. So you can take any subject you like, Ahmed is your subject, and you can use any of the main verbs which they are specifying, such as expects, and let's use a nice one, to survive. Ahmed expects to survive coronavirus. Ahmed does not think he is going to die of coronavirus. Again, it's the exact same pattern. Ahmed will be your subject. Because it is he, you have an S on the end of the main verb. You will use an infinitive to survive, and your predicate here is coronavirus. Okay, that is basically what we need to understand about the verbs to be. Sorry, about the gerund and the infinitive. That is basically what we need to understand. Now, the homework today is to test our knowledge of gerunds and infinitives. So, on page 18, we need you to have a look at exercise A, which is underneath the grammar box about gerunds and infinitives. All you need to do for exercise A is to underline each gerund and each infinitive. If you get confused about what is a gerund and what is an infinitive, all you need to do, look at the box above you and it will remind you the gerund is the base verb plus ing. The infinitive is to plus the base verb. Right. The first question is, when Ginny Pitcher needed to hire a director of business development, she turned to her closest friend, Kate Massey. Read the sentence through slowly and put a line under whatever gerund or infinitive you can see. All right. The infinitive in this question is to hire. There is no gerund here. You do not have a word such as hiring or reading or walking or anything ending with an ing. So the infinitive here is to hire. Now, there is another to in this sentence where it says she turned to her close friend Kate Massey. That is not an infinitive. Remember our definition of an infinitive? Is to plus the base verb. Hire is a base verb. So when you have to hire, it is an infinitive. Her is not a verb at all. Her in this case is the possessive adjective. So when you say she turned to her close friend, that is not an infinitive. For something to be an infinitive, it must be to plus the verb. To plus a noun, to plus a pronoun, to plus an adjective, those are not infinitives. An infinitive is to plus the base verb. Nothing else is an infinitive. So in this question, we have the infinitive to hire. There is no gerund because there is nothing ending with the ing. Now, what I need you gentlemen to do for the homework, you need to go through all the other sentences in section A. You need to underline every gerund that you see in any of these sentences and any infinitive that you see in any of the sentences. All right. I suggest you pause the video while you do that, and then we will move on to the next section of the homework. All right. You should have all paused the video to cover section 18A for your homework. The next section of the homework is on page 19, and it is exercise B. Exercise B is a little bit different from exercise A. What they want you to do in exercise B is to look each time at the verb, which is in brackets. If you don't know what brackets are, brackets are those things. So each time there's going to be a space and there's going to be a verb in brackets. Example of number 1, the verb in brackets is finish. They then need you to make either a main verb, either an infinitive or a gerund. Okay, so if you look at question number 1, we have to either make the infinitive to finish, or we must make the gerund finishing from that verb in brackets finish. Now, how do we decide whether it is going to take a gerund or an infinitive? The way you decide whether to use a gerund or an infinitive is to look firstly at the main verb. Some main verbs take a gerund, some main verbs take an infinitive, and there are some that can take an infinitive or a gerund. Let us look at example number 1. In example number 1, our main verb is expects. Now, we either have to give a gerund, Haya expects finishing business school in June, or we have to use an infinitive, Haya expects to finish business school in June. So we have two options here. We can either put finishing, the gerund, or we can put to finish business school in June. If you are confused, the first thing you do, you identify your main verb, which in this case is expects. Then look back at your textbook, and we see that it says about infinitives. Infinitives are also used after certain verbs, such as want, decide, try, hope, need, expect, agree, and learn. So if the infinitive is used after expect, and our main verb in the example here is expects, Haya expects, then our answer has to be the infinitive to finish. It cannot be the gerund finishing. If we look at example number 2, this book recommends, and the verb in brackets is hiring. So our possibilities are the infinitive to hire or the gerund hiring. Again, we must now decide which is the correct answer. Is it the infinitive to hire, or is it the gerund hiring? The way we work this out is quite simple again. We look at the main verb. Our main verb here is recommends. If we go back again to our notes, we will see that it says Gerunds are also used after prepositions, such as about, of, in, for, and against, and after certain verbs, such as consider, suggest, and recommend. If recommend takes a gerund, and the question says, if recommend takes a gerund, and the question says, this book recommends, then you know that the answer has to be hiring, because hiring is the gerund. It cannot be to hire, because if we use to hire, that is the infinitive, but recommends takes the gerund, not the infinitive. All right, so the way you do this exercise, you must look in each sentence at the main verb or the adjective, for instance, difficult, and you must then say whether it takes a gerund or whether it takes an infinitive. Anytime that you are confused or you are not sure, it is very easy. Go back to the notes and you can see the way in which we use gerunds, and you can see the ways in which we use infinitives, and that will tell you which one you need to do. Okay, gentlemen, what we need to do with the homework. The university will be sending you the contact details of all your teachers. This is the speaking class. So what I need you to do, when you have done exercise 18A and exercise 18B and filled them in your book, you need to take a photo of each of them on your smartphone. You need to take another photo of the grammar notes that you have written on your smartphone, and you need to send those photos of the two exercises and the grammar notes as attachments to whoever is your speaking teacher. So if your speaking teacher is Dr. Mujib, you then send him a copy of your grammar notes for this lesson, a copy of exercise 18A when you have done it, and exercise 19B when you have done it. Just take a photo and just make sure that you give Dr. Mujib your name, your class number, whether you group to M201 or E207, and your student number. If it is Dr. Isam or if it is Dr. Hassan, whoever is your speaking class teacher, he is the man that you need to send the homework to, and you will be given his details by the university, and you will then be able to send it to him. All right. I suggest again that you pause the video now and that you do exercise 19B, and when you have done it, come back and we can move on. All right, I'm assuming you have done exercise 19B and you're now ready to move on. The second component of the lesson today is our conversational skills component, and I need you all to go to page 20 where we are going to go through this. Okay. The section that we will be on is speaking skill, checking for understanding, and it should be here on page 20 in your book. All right. The speaking that we do in our speaking class is mainly conversational speaking. And the conversational skill that we are practicing today is using questions to check understanding. Unfortunately, I don't have you with me, so in most speaking classes, when we have gone through the exercise, I get the students to stand up 2 by 2 and to practice the skill that we have just done so that they can reinforce it. We're not able to do this now because this is online learning, so I am just going to go through very quickly the way that we do this and the reason we do this. This particular skill is important because very often in life we have to give people information or we have to explain something. And sometimes when we are giving information to the other person, say I'm telling something to Rian or I'm explaining something to Sally, I can see that Rian doesn't get it or Sally does not understand properly or he's not sure of what I mean. Stop, I'm still on.